Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to some War Thunder. Today we are going to be flying an F4 Phantom variant. This is the F4E Phantom 2. It is the Army Phantom. It has an internal 20mm cannon in the nose. I currently do not have the SARs unlocked, so I'm just running with 4 AIM-9Js and 1 external fuel tank. Let's get into it. So, when the F4s were introduced, there was a dichotomy of tactics. They were introduced in a time when the US military had figured the gun was going the way of the dodo, meaning it was disappearing. And to an extent, they were correct. But they had decided to only arm the F4 Phantom, which was the US Navy's at the time, with only missiles, because its intended role was to be a fleet interceptor, which is to go up in the air, go up really, really high, detect targets with its radar, and shoot AIM-7 Sparrows at them from a distance, protecting the fleet from the hordes of Soviet bombers that we thought would be incoming. Now, the F4 got just jammed into a fighter role. And the Navy, as smart as they are, they did make a gun pod for it, but it was very, very, very rarely ever mounted or used in an air-to-air concept, because the US Navy already had a gunfighter, and that was the F-8U-2 Corsair, or Crusader, not Corsair. But when the Army got them, they kept trying to jam these things into dogfights with MiGs that are going to be faster and more maneuverable. And they took extremely heavy casualties. Now, this was mainly due not to the Phantom's poor performance in a turn fight, which it did. It did not excel in turn fights, let's be fair. It did not. That was not what it was designed to do. But it was tactics and maintenance that really held it back. A lot of the missiles this thing used were very, very poorly maintained, so they very, very rarely ever worked. Along with the tactics at the time, being BVR was essentially not allowed. Okay. Okay, gotta not just cut that out entirely. That's great. I love getting intercepted by a guy that's dead. I don't have very good luck in this thing. So, okay, let's start off with what this is. When the F4 was introduced, the F4 was introduced as a fleet intercept fighter. It was made for the Navy to shoot long-range missiles at Soviet bombers that were approaching carrier battle groups. The Navy did not put a gun on this thing initially, and it was never designed to have one. The reason being is the Navy already had a gunfighter, and their gunfighter was known as the F-8U-2 Crusader. Now, this thing got adopted by the US Air Force and US Marine Corps later on in its service life. And, due to poor tactics and poor maintenance, the F-4s saw pretty rough losses in the initial months of the Vietnam War, because they were getting into dogfights with MiGs. Something that the Phantom was never designed to do. It was never designed to go toe-to-toe with a premier jet fighter of the Soviet Union, or even the slower subsonic versions of them that could outmaneuver them. So, Phantom pilots and Phantom drivers would get into dogfights, and then they would complain when the lack of the cannon prevented them from getting kills, because this thing was never meant to do that. Along with poor maintenance, making the AIM-7 Sparrows and the AIM-9 Sidewinders, and the AIM-4 Falcons, I believe, which the AIM-4 Falcons were horribly unreliable anyway, but also due to poor maintenance, the Sidewinders and the Sparrows had a lot of problems coming off the rails and working. Now, this was solved later in the war, where they were getting more and more kills with missiles. Now, the U.S. Air Force did, in fact, request to put a gun on this thing and an internal cannon. The initial variants were the Su-16 and the Su, I believe, 14 gun pods that this thing had on it. And then, in the F4E, they attached an internal 20mm cannon, which, by the way, the Navy never adopted. They preferred to use gun pods whenever they mounted a gun on their Phantoms, which was rarely, if ever. During its service, it had 107 air-to-air victories, with only 11 coming from the gun in any respect. And that's combined with the Su-14 gun pod, the Su-16 gun pod, and the F4E Phantom, with the internal 20mm cannon. This became a source of great debate within the military community, because everybody always figured that the gun would always outwork the missile and always outplay the missile. But as dogfight ranges extended to beyond the visual range capacity, the gun became less and less of a feature, and arguably forgotten. In game, we have four American variants of the F4. We have the F4S, the F4C, the F4J, and what I'm flying, the F4E. As I get plinked by a F5. I want to keep this mountain in between me and this F4 for as long as I humanly can, so that, like, it has to be a guns shot. I get a good damage to his tail, and I gotta watch my 6. So sadly, I do not get a backseater. I'll send all of my rounds low there. He's going into full Dorito mode. I need to dive down below this Kafir's guns and shoot a Fox 2 at this guy, which he will not dodge, and he will go down for my first kill of the day. So, how does the F4E fly in War Thunder? The F4E is just a more maneuverable Phantom. Saying that, the Phantoms are not very maneuverable in the first place, and even a slight bit of maneuverability is an improvement. I do try and force this thing into a dogfighting role, because I do not have aim 7s right now. But when I do get aim 7s, I will probably play it just like I play my F4J, just with a lot less success with the aim 7s. This thing does very, very well in a straight line. It's heavy, it has a whole lot of engine power, and it just brute forces things. This is where we get the saying, "In thrust we trust," because the Phantom was known for being able to just brute force its way out of bad situations.
Attention to the map. Attention to the designated grid zone.
The F4 in War Thunder sits a bit too high for my liking. I wish it sat a little lower, but it's still workable here. Previously, before a lot of the next generation of jets were added, like the F-14s, like the MiG-23s, the F-4s were some of the best planes in War Thunder, because they used their superior thrust and armament to gain an advantage over the enemies. Take this Su-22 for example. I'm going to use my superior thrust to get back around him a lot faster than he can get around on me. And get a clean deflection with my AIM-9. Now, I've shot him with an AIM-9J, which has 20 Gs of pull. If this was the 9E, I would not have taken that shot. I don't think he noticed me firing that missile, so it might hit him. It will. For kill number 2. I'll jump this Sukhoi, and I believe if he makes another turn, he will probably be going into the bottom. But if he doesn't, I will go up, trade a lot of my speed for altitude, and then I will bend it back over to re-engage. I'm doing this just so I can make sure I don't get in front of the Su-25. Those R-60s, those all-aspect 30G overload missiles, are nasty. I don't want to get in front of them, and I don't want to have to deal with them. Now we hunt for our next victim, which I believe will probably be that F5, who is diving out of the heavens. Now, depending on his directionality in this dive, I might be able to get a clean Fox 2. I will 100% be able to get a clean Fox 2 on him. I'm just going to rip right over him. But this will be a clean Fox 2 shot. We're both going Mach Jesus. And that A-10 hit him, and I'll finish him off for kill number 2. Now, it did credit that A-10 with the kill. That is not a kill steal. That missile was long off of the airframe before he shot his. Before he was hit. So, now I'm going to close on this Blackburn Buccaneer. And I'm going to close rather rapidly because these J-79 turbojets that this thing is equipped with are extremely powerful. Good luck. Fox 2 away. He's going to flare it. So, this is going to have to be a guns, guns, guns kill. Which, with an EEGS shot, I can make a nice clean kill on him. Now this MiG-23 is getting chased by this MiG-21, who is flaring his... This MiG-23 is flaring the missiles off of him. I'm going to try and get a radar lock on that MiG-21 just to give him something else to think about that's not our MiG-23. Now, this radar does not have an IFF, so it will lock whatever it wants if it's in the radar cone. Fox 2 on that MiG. That's a good track, and that's going to knock him down for number 4. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that will be all for the night. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you wanna. I'd be deeply appreciative. I'm going to be live on Twitch, 8 p.m. EST tonight. I hope to see you guys there, and if I don't, again, thank you for watching. Appreciate y'all. I'll see you next time.